Carl Jung spent decades studying a very specific type of person, not the obvious enemies and not the ones who attack you openly, but those who smile to your face while undermining you behind your back. Those who say one thing but do another. Those who seem like friends but are actually your worst adversaries. And Jung discovered something deeply unsettling. He identified 8 specific phrases that these people use, phrases that seem harmless, even gentle, but that carry hidden venom. If you've ever heard one of these phrases from someone, Jung would warn you, this person is not on your side. They're wearing a mask, and behind that mask lies real hostility. In this video, you're going to learn the 8 phrases that disguised enemies say, and more importantly, you'll learn how to protect yourself. Because the moment you identify these phrases, you see through the mask, and the person completely loses their power over you. So if you want to stop being deceived, if you want to recognize who's really against you, you need to pay attention to what's coming next. Because Jung not only identified these phrases, he explained why they work and how you can defend yourself. Let's start with the first phrase, and this is one of the most dangerous. First phrase, I'm only telling you this because I care about you. Jung taught that when someone needs to announce that they care, it's usually because they don't care. Not really. It's what he called a false facade, a social mask that hides their true intention. Let me explain how it works. Imagine you've achieved something significant, a promotion, a new relationship, a successful project, and someone comes up to you and says, look, I'm only telling you this because I care about you, but I think you're deluding yourself. I don't think this is going to work out. Seems like genuine concern. Doesn't it? But Jung would teach you to pay attention to something crucial, the timing. Why is this person saying this now? Right when you've achieved something. Because disguised enemies don't attack you when you're down, they attack you when you're rising. And they use this specific phrase because it creates a perfect psychological trap. If you question it, you seem ungrateful. After all, the person is just caring, right? If you believe it. You plant doubt in your own achievement, and the person gets exactly what they wanted, to sabotage your success. Jung called this shadow projection. The person projects their own envy and hostility, disguising it as concern. And most people fall for it because we've been taught to be grateful when someone shows concern. But Jung would teach you, true concern doesn't need a preface. True concern doesn't come accompanied by doubt about your achievements. True concern celebrates with you first, and then, if there's something legitimate to point out, it's done with respect, not with venom disguised as care. So, whenever you hear this phrase, especially at the moment of an achievement, ask yourself, what does this person really want? Because usually it's not to protect you, it's to diminish you. And now comes the second phrase, and this is even more subtle. Second phrase, you've always been like this, haven't you? Seems like a casual observation, even affectionate. But Jung revealed that this phrase is one of the most effective ways to trap you in the past. It's what he called stifled individuation, preventing you from evolving, preventing you from growing. Let me show you how it works in practice. Imagine you've changed something important in your life. You left a toxic relationship. You set boundaries. You started valuing yourself, and someone says, you've always been like this, haven't you? Always exaggerating, always dramatic, always creating problems. What happens when you hear that? You start to question your own change. You start to think, am I exaggerating after all? Am I the problem? And that's exactly what the person wants. To make you doubt your evolution. Jung explained that toxic people have a psychological investment in keeping you the way you were. Because when you change, when you grow, when you become stronger, you become less controllable. And disguised enemies don't want you to be strong. They want you to be predictable, manipulable, small. So they use this phrase to push you back to who you were. And the worst part, they say it with a tone of familiarity, as if they know you so well, as if they're being honest. But Jung would teach you to recognize the truth. No one who really loves you tries to prevent your growth. No one who's genuinely on your side uses your past as a weapon against your present. People who truly love you celebrate when you evolve. They notice the change. They respect the effort you made. Disguised enemies do the opposite. They deny your change. They trap you in the old version of you, because the old version was easier to manipulate. So if someone uses your past to invalidate your present, Jung would tell you, this person doesn't want your good. They want your control. And you don't need to prove anything to them. You don't need to convince them of your change. You simply continue to grow and leave behind anyone who can't keep up. But hold on, because the third phrase is even more dangerous, and you've probably heard it. Third phrase, I don't want to hurt you, but... Jung taught that whenever someone says, I don't want to hurt you, it's because they want to do exactly that. Hurt you. It's what he called masked sadism. Cruelty disguised as brutal honesty. Think about it. If someone really doesn't want to hurt you, they don't need to announce it. They simply don't hurt you. But when they announce that they don't want to hurt you, they're doing two things at the same time. First, they're excusing themselves from responsibility. After all, they warned you they didn't want to hurt you, so if you get hurt, the problem is your sensitivity, not their cruelty. Second, they're creating an expectation. When you hear, I don't want to hurt you, but your body already prepares for the attack, and this multiplies the impact of what comes next. Jung observed this in his patients. He saw that these people who use this preface generally say devastating things afterwards. I don't want to hurt you, but you look ridiculous. I don't want to hurt you, but no one takes you seriously. I don't want to hurt you, but you're deluding yourself if you think this is going to work out. And the most painful thing is that these people generally present themselves as honest friends. They say, someone needs to tell you the truth. But Jung would teach you to differentiate truth with compassion vs cruelty with an excuse. Genuine truth may be hard, but it comes accompanied by care, from context, from the intention of helping you grow. Masked sadism comes to destroy, to humiliate, to make you feel small. And the person using this phrase knows exactly what they're doing. They're calculating the damage. That's why Jung warned, when someone tells you they're going to hurt you, believe them and protect yourself, because it doesn't matter what they say afterward. The intention is already clear in the preface. And you don't have to absorb cruelty just because someone calls it honesty. Now, there are 3 people who ignored those first 3 signs, and they all regretted it later, because when you ignore these phrases, when you rationalize the behavior of these people, you give them permission to continue, and they continue always. But before I show you the 4th phrase, which is possibly the most treacherous of all, I need to tell you something. You've just learned 3 psychological patterns that Carl Jung spent decades studying. 3 phrases that can save you from years of suffering with toxic people. And this kind of knowledge bothers a lot of people. Enemies in disguise don't want you to know this, because the moment you know, you become invisible to their manipulation. So if this content is empowering you, if you're recognizing patterns you've already experienced, there's something you can do. The super thanks down there isn't just financial support. It's you saying, this information is worth its weight in gold. Keep revealing what others are hiding. When you click on that heart, you're not just supporting me, you're protecting other people. Because every video like this that I can make is one more person freeing themselves from destructive relationships. So if you feel that this knowledge has changed something in you, click there. The amount you choose is perfect because you're no longer a victim. You're someone who protects themselves with knowledge. And now let's go to the fourth phrase. And you need to listen to this one with maximum attention. Fourth phrase, you're too sensitive. Jung dedicated entire studies to this phrase because it's one of the most effective forms of psychological invalidation. It's what he called gaslighting of sensitivity, making you doubt your own emotional perception. Let me explain to you why this is so dangerous. When someone hurts you, when someone disrespects you, when someone crosses a boundary, your sensitivity should react. It's your emotional protection system working. It's your unconscious alerting you. This isn't right. But enemies in disguise know this, and they use this specific phrase to turn off your protection system. Imagine that someone makes a humiliating joke about you in front of other people. You feel bad, obviously. And when you show discomfort, the person says, "Wow, you're too sensitive. It was just a joke. Relax." What happens? First, you feel guilty for having felt bad. After all, it was just a joke, right? Second, you start to doubt your own reading of the situation. Am I too sensitive? Is the problem me? Third, you stop reacting because you don't want to be the sensitive one, the dramatic one, the annoying one. And that's exactly what the person wants. Jung explained that this phrase is a form of emotional control. The person hurts you and then convinces you that you shouldn't feel hurt. They reverse the responsibility. The problem isn't their cruelty. The problem is your sensitivity. And over time, this breaks you because you stop trusting your own emotions. You stop trusting your instinct. You stop protecting yourself. And enemies in disguise are counting on that. They need you to doubt yourself to continue manipulating you. But Jung would teach you something liberating. Your sensitivity is not weakness. It's emotional intelligence. When you feel that something is wrong, it usually is. Your unconscious is processing signals that your conscious mind hasn't organized yet. And toxic people hate when you trust your emotions, because authentic emotions don't lie. So they try to convince you that you feel too much, react too much, care too much. But the truth is that you feel just the right amount. And they hurt too much. So whenever someone uses this phrase against you, remember what Jung said: until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Translating, trust what you feel. Your unconscious is protecting you, and whoever calls you sensitive is usually the one who benefits from your insensitivity. Now comes the fifth phrase, and if you've already heard the previous four from the same person, pay extra attention to this one. Fifth phrase, I did it for your own good. Jung exhaustively studied this phrase because it's what he called the tyranny of another's good, controlling you while claiming to be helping you. And the most disturbing thing is that the person who says this usually believes it. They really think they're doing the right thing. But Jung would teach you something crucial. Intention does not nullify invasion. Let me show you how this works. Imagine that you made an important decision. Changed jobs, ended a relationship, chose a different path than they expected from you, and someone did something against your will, without consulting you, without respecting your choice. And when you question it, the person says, I did it for your own good. I knew you were going to regret it. I was protecting you from yourself. Sounds like care, doesn't it? But Jung would warn you, whenever someone acts against your will and then justifies it as being for your own good, that person is treating you as incapable. They're saying, without words, I know better than you what's good for you. And that is profoundly destructive. because it destroys your autonomy. It destroys your self-confidence. Jung called this a masked superiority complex. The person puts themselves in a position of authority over your life, and the worst part is that they feel virtuous doing this. They think they're saving you, but in reality, they're sabotaging you. Because every time someone acts for your own good without respecting your will, they send you a subliminal message. You're not capable of deciding. You're not trustworthy. You need me to guide you, and over time, you internalize this. You start to doubt your own choices. You start to seek external approval for everything. Because you've been trained to believe that alone, you fail. And enemies in disguise are counting on that. They need you to doubt yourself to maintain control. But Jung would teach you something liberating. No one has the right to decide for your own good without your permission. It doesn't matter how good the intention is. It doesn't matter how right the person thinks they are. Let's delve deeper into the subtle yet devastating world of manipulative language, as seen through the discerning lens of Carl Jung. If someone acts against your will, they're encroaching upon your boundaries. And encroachment, even with the best intentions, is still encroachment. It's a violation of your personal space. So whenever someone does something for you without consulting you, and then justifies it as being for your own good, ask them this: if it was truly for my own good, why wasn't I included in the decision-making process? Because people who genuinely want what's best for you respect you as a capable individual. They consult you. They trust your judgment. They value your input. Disguised adversaries do the opposite. They decide for you, and then they try to convince you that you should be grateful. They want you to feel indebted, but you shouldn't be. You must establish boundaries and make it absolutely crystal clear. What's good for me is decided with me, not without me. My well-being is not a solo project they get to dictate. And now, let's move on to the sixth phrase. This one is particularly devastating because it appears completely harmless on the surface. Sixth phrase: you're exaggerating. Jung identified this seemingly innocuous statement as one of the most subtle forms of psychological manipulation. It's insidious in its simplicity. It's what he termed reality minimization, making you doubt the severity of what actually happened, twisting your perception, and it works with surgical precision. It's a calculated attack on your emotional stability. Imagine that someone has disrespected you, humiliated you, crossed a clear boundary, a line was crossed, and when you confront them, the person says, "You're exaggerating, it wasn't that bad. You're making a mountain out of a molehill." They gaslight you into questioning your own feelings. What happens inside you when you hear that? What's your gut reaction? You start to question yourself. Am I really exaggerating? Am I being too dramatic? Maybe I'm overreacting. And that's exactly what the other person wants. To make you minimize what they did, to make you question the gravity of the violation. They want you to second-guess yourself. Jung explained that this phrase is particularly effective because it attacks your perception of reality itself. It undermines your confidence. It's not just about the event, it's about your ability to judge the event, to assess the situation accurately. The person isn't just saying that what they did wasn't a big deal. They're subtly implying that you don't know how to judge what's a big deal. They are questioning your character, that your internal meter is broken, that you can't trust your own evaluation, that you are unreliable. And over time, this erodes your self-trust. It slowly destroys your sense of self-worth because you stop trusting yourself. You become unsure of your own feelings and reactions. You stop reacting when you should react. You start accepting increasingly egregious disrespect. You lower your standards because you've been trained to believe that you exaggerate, that you're too sensitive, that you just don't know how to properly assess the situation. But Jung would teach you something powerful. If you felt it, it's not an exaggeration. Validate your own feelings. Your emotions are data. They're information from your unconscious mind processing the situation. They are valuable insights. And when someone minimizes what you felt, they're not being rational. They're being manipulative. There is a hidden agenda because they know that if you believe you exaggerated, you'll accept the disrespect and they'll continue to disrespect you without consequence. So whenever someone tells you that you're exaggerating, ask yourself, who benefits if I believe that? Follow the money, or in this case, the benefit, because it's usually the person who disrespected you, the person who crossed the boundary, the person who wants to continue doing the same thing without having to face any repercussions. And you don't need to minimize what you feel to make someone feel better about what they did. You are not responsible for their feelings. If you felt it, it's valid. And if someone disrespected you, they need to deal with the consequences, not you with the guilt. The guilt belongs to them. Now, let's move on to the 7th phrase. And if you've made it this far, recognizing several of these phrases in a particular person, this next one will give you complete clarity. 7th phrase, everyone thinks that you. Jung called this the tyranny of the imaginary majority, using a supposed collective opinion to control you, creating a false sense of consensus. And it's one of the most effective manipulations that exist, because it plays on our deepest insecurities. Because humans are social beings. We care what others think. It's part of our nature, our need for belonging, and disguised adversaries know this. So they use this phrase to make you feel isolated, judged, wrong. They want you to feel alone. Let me show you how it works. Imagine that you've made a decision, or you acted in a certain way, or you've established a boundary, you set a limit, and someone says, "Look, I didn't want to tell you this, but everyone thinks you're being difficult. Everyone thinks you've changed. Everyone's been talking about you." It's a calculated attack. How do you feel when you hear that? What's your immediate reaction? You feel exposed, judged, alone against the world. It feels like everyone is against you, and most importantly, you start to question whether you're wrong. After all, if everyone thinks so, maybe it's true, right? Maybe you are the problem. Wrong. Absolutely wrong. Jung would teach you to ask 3 crucial questions when someone uses this phrase. It is your defense against manipulation. First, who is everyone? Names specifically, because usually everyone is just 2 or 3 people, or just the person speaking, projecting their own opinion. Second, what exactly did they say? Not the interpretation, the exact words, because usually the person completely distorts what others said. They twist the narrative. Third, why are you telling me this? What's your intention? Because if it was genuinely to help me, the person would say it in a constructive way, not just drop an emotional bomb. Jung observed that this phrase rarely comes from a place of genuine care. It comes from a place of control. They are trying to control you through social pressure. The person wants to make you feel isolated, wants to make you doubt yourself, wants to push you back to where you were more controllable, where you were easier to manage. And they use this imaginary majority because they don't have their own arguments strong enough. They are relying on social pressure instead of logic. So they invent a troop of people judging you, and they expect you to cave to the weight of the supposed collective opinion. They want you to conform. But Jung would teach you something liberating. Your life isn't a democracy. You don't need the approval of the majority to be who you are. You get to choose your own path, and usually When someone says that everyone's talking about you, the only person talking is them. They are the only one making noise. So, don't cave to this invisible pressure. Don't question your choices based on a majority that probably doesn't even exist. They are trying to manipulate you with lies. Ask who, ask what, ask why. Demand the truth. And most of the time, the person won't have answers, because it was manipulation from the very beginning. The whole thing was a lie. And now, the eighth and last phrase, the most treacherous of them all, the ultimate betrayal. Eighth phrase, I've always been on your side. Jung dedicated specific studies to this phrase because it's what he called a rewriting of history. They are trying to gaslight you into questioning your own memories. The person tries to erase all the previous toxic behavior with a present-day declaration, a simple statement, and it's devastating because it forces you to question your own memory. It makes you doubt your own experiences. Think about it with me. Imagine that you've finally realized it. You've connected the dots. You've seen that this person has repeatedly sabotaged you. They were working against you the whole time. And when you confront them, when you establish boundaries, when you step away, the person says, "How can you do this to me? I've always been on your side. I've always supported you." They are trying to rewrite history, and you become confused because part of you knows that it's not true. You remember their betrayal, but another part starts to question, am I being unfair? Am I forgetting the good things? And that's exactly what the person wants, to make you question your own memory, to make you feel guilty for establishing boundaries. They want you to feel like the bad guy. Jung called this temporal gaslighting. The person tries to convince you that the history you lived didn't happen. They want to gaslight you into thinking things never happened, that all the times they sabotaged you weren't sabotage, that all the times they diminished you weren't diminishment. They are trying to rewrite their wrongdoings, that in reality, she's always been your ally, and you're the one being ungrateful. But Carl Jung would teach you something crucial. Always is an absolute word, and people who have truly been on your side don't need to say it, because the facts speak for them. Their actions prove it. When someone needs to declare that they've always been on your side, it's usually because they haven't been, and she knows it. So she tries to rewrite the narrative. She tries to convince you of a version of the story where she's the wronged heroine. But you live the real story. You know what happened, and you don't need to give up your truth to accommodate anyone's fantasy. Jung would say, trust your memory. Trust the patterns you've observed. Trust the times you felt uneasy and didn't understand why. Because your unconscious registered everything. And when you finally connect the dots, when you finally see the pattern, don't let anyone convince you that you're making it up. You're not. You're finally seeing. And now that you know the 8 phrases, now that you can identify these patterns, you need to know one thing. Enemies in disguise don't use these phrases once. They use them repeatedly. It's a pattern. And the more phrases you recognize coming from the same person, the clearer it becomes. This person is not your friend. She may smile. She may be polite. She may even say she loves you. But the words don't lie. The pattern doesn't lie. And Jung gave you these tools exactly for this reason, to stop you from rationalizing, to stop giving second, third, 10th chances, to trust what you observe and protect yourself. So, what do you do now? First, observe. Don't react immediately, but start paying attention to who uses these phrases with you. Second, mentally document. When you hear one of these phrases, register it internally. See if there's a pattern. See if there's repetition. Third, trust your perception. If you've recognized multiple phrases coming from the same person, believe what you're seeing. Fourth, establish boundaries. You don't need to confront. You don't need to explain. But you can distance yourself. You can protect your energy. And fifth, don't blame yourself. Enemies in disguise are experts at disguising themselves. If it took you a while to realize, it wasn't because you're naive. It was because they're skilled. But now you know. Now you have the tools. And the moment you identify these phrases, you see through the mask, and the person completely loses their power over you. Jung said something powerful that summarizes all of this. Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of others. Translating, when you recognize these patterns, when you name these manipulations, you become immune to them. You don't fall for it anymore. You don't rationalize it anymore. You simply see and protect yourself, and that is freedom. Now I want to hear from you. How many of these 8 phrases have you heard? Comment the number below, from 1 to 8, without naming names, just the number, because you need to know you're not alone in this. A lot of people have heard these phrases. A lot of people have been manipulated by enemies in disguise, and when you share, when you identify, you break the power of these words. So comment the number of phrases you recognized, and if you want the next video to be about how to establish boundaries with these people, comment boundaries. I read all the comments, and your story matters. And for you who've stayed until now, who watched until the end, who really wants to protect yourself, I want to leave you with one last truth from Jung. He said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." And that's what you've done today. You didn't just look outside, at the toxic people. You looked inside, at the moments you ignored your instinct, at the times you rationalized disrespect, at the patterns you didn't want to see. And now that you see, now that you know, you can't unsee it. These 8 phrases will echo every time someone tries to use them on you, and you'll recognize it immediately. You'll see through the mask, and you'll protect yourself, because you're no longer a victim. You're someone who knows, and whoever knows protects themselves. Until the next video, and remember, not every enemy declares themselves. The most dangerous ones smile in your face, but now you know how to identify them, and that changes everything.